Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for attending very late on a Monday. We're going to try to make this very quick because we know that it's not how everybody wants to spend their money on a Monday on a Zoom call. But I am Josh Weiner. I'm the Chief Advocacy Officer at Navi. Navi works to combat extremism in K-12 schools as well as support American civic values. We promote policy like keeping politics out of the classroom, as well as transparency of curriculum and other things. And so, what's happening at Chicago Public Schools fits squarely into some of the things that we advocate for, and we're very concerned about what is happening. Also introducing here is Sharon Sorkin. Sharon's our Director of Community Engagement. Sharon and I basically cover our engagement with parents, teachers, educators, as well as I work with elected officials and policymakers at the state and federal level. I'm going to pass it to Juan to give an introduction of the Urban Center who we're partnering with on this webinar.
Thank you very much, Josh. My name is Juan Rangel. I'm the CEO of the Urban Center. The Urban Center is a 501c4 nonprofit organization, and we were launched 2 years ago, primarily out of concern of the direction that our city and state, to some degree, have been taking on a number of issues that are important to our communities. And when I say our communities, I say we consider ourselves a centrist organization, politically centrist organization, and concerns about high taxes, high crime, the quality of education in the public schools and just education in general. And we're an advocacy organization. So in the last 2 years, we've been working with communities across primarily Chicago right now, but we do plan on expanding into the broader state level. But across the city of Chicago, working with different communities, community organizing. That's my background, although some people know me as having run a very large charter school network about 15 years ago. And this issue strikes home for many families and many parents, the issue of the May 1st Day of Civic Action. And so we've been working with parents in organizing them and giving the issue a focus. So.
All right, Daniel, go to the next slide. Worth noting also that Navi is a nonpartisan organization. We are going to go through today what is the CTU resolution, the Mayday resolution, what was the compromise between the Chicago Teachers Union and Chicago Public Schools, what do we see as the problem with this resolution or with this compromise, the memorandum of understanding, what's been done thus far, what can we on this call do moving forward throughout the week and beyond the week, and then there is a Q&A. So there is a way to ask questions. Feel free to ask questions. We will pick some questions after we get through that we don't feel were covered in the slides that we go through.
Josh, we did just get one sort of housekeeping question, which is, are they all muted? And I think the answer is yes. The mechanism by which they ask questions will just be in this Q&A chat. So.
That's right. Your questions will just be in the Q&A chat. Also, this webinar will be recorded, so we will provide a link to everybody afterwards so you can share it out with other parents as well. Okay, let's go to the next slide. So on March 11th, the Chicago Teachers Union at their House of Delegates meeting passed a resolution for May 1st Day of Civic Action in defense of public education, as they called it, calling for a national day of no work, no school, no shopping to defend our democracy, demand ICE out of our cities, and tax the rich to support our schools and vital services. To organize and promote age-appropriate, what they say is age-appropriate civic education, including marches and rallies, which, based on what is happening, we'd argue is not age-appropriate, especially for some of the younger kids. To participate in collective actions on Mayday, to reject privatization, illegal wars, union busting, anti-immigrant and anti-DEI policies, and federal overreach into our classrooms. There was actually a litany of causes on here. I think we counted over 30, including attacks on LGBTQ rights, eroding protections for Black, Brown, immigrant, and non-Christian communities, white supremacy, voting rights, authoritarian power, APAC, Iran, Lebanon, and even more than that. Um, Affirms that a future of public education will be shaped by educators, students, and families, not by billionaires, corporate PACs, or authoritarian politicians or authoritarian organizations, which they actually named the Urban Center, Common Ground Collective, and some others that are really looking for a less extreme and more centrist city and education policy. So this Mayday resolution really called on Chicago Public Schools to close schools on May 1st. Go to the next slide. So after a week of back and forth and pressure from CTU to try to get Dr. Macklin King, the CEO of Chicago Public Schools, to cancel schools, there was a call between Mayor Johnson and Macklin King, where Mayor Johnson purportedly pressured her to come to a compromise. And this compromise came out in a memorandum of understanding. That memorandum of understanding designates May 1st as a day of observance for district-wide civic engagement, recognizing the specific need to engage on school funding and treatment of Black, Brown, and immigrant communities by federal agents. CPS emphasized the importance of civic engagement to establish CTU a working group that includes them to identify supplemental civic engagement curriculum in connection with observance of May 1st each year. And we'll explain a little bit why this is problematic considering what we've uncovered about the curriculum they're trying to put in schools. And that CPS provide at least 100 schools with bagged lunches and buses to Civic Day of Action events and or a rally in Union Park. So there is a rally in Union Park for May Day, and they have essentially gotten CPS to commit to buses. And what Dr. King did is, instead of saying we're going to do this or not, it's based on the student travel policy, which means that each principal of each school will get to decide whether they want to participate in this or not, which is a little bit of a tough thing to put on each school principal. And it's part of one of the actions that we want you to take. Another piece is that CPS is not to retaliate against any employees who decide to engage in these civic events. So go to the next slide, Daniel. I want you guys to really understand some of the things that we saw that Chicago Teachers Union members in the CTU have been promoting as far as curriculum. We took a look at a curriculum fair, which you can see was promoted on the right. We joined essentially that to see what was being promoted there. And we saw some very concerning things. Very one-sided, very politicized, very partisan type of curriculum. For example, does my curriculum facilitate genocide? Telling teachers that traditional social studies education upholds a genocidal domestic and global status quo, basically saying that the United States commits genocide, and that the United States is foundationally exploitative and oppressive in its creation and current operation. One workshop told teachers that their real job is to teach children how to disrupt systems of power, distracting from what we think are the foundations of education, really, reading, writing, and science, and coaching on how to sneak political activism past administrators. So they actually were telling these teachers, this is how you get this social justice curriculum into class without the oversight of the administrators of your school. This is really problematic because the actual MOU asks principals to approve all new curriculum for May Day before it gets into the classroom. But they're actually telling their teachers, just sneak it in, and this is how you do it. They call it fugitive pedagogy. And then another one was the Drop the ADL campaign, which we've previously reported actually aims to delegitimize every Jewish advocacy organization out of K-12 institutions. All of these actually earned professional development credit for teachers to join, which is something that Navi is trying to address with the state. We also joined an NEA webinar, which provided teachers with, this was CTU and NEA together, provided teachers with high school curriculum that leads students to conclude that the US is currently authoritarian and fascist. And also preschool curriculum, this is for 3 and 4-year-olds, to put in front of classrooms for protest, immigration politics, anti-racism, anti-capitalism, and gender identity. So this look, it's not about whether we agree with any of these topics or not. It's the fact that they're highly politicized. It's the fact that they're deprioritizing core instructional time. Um, and it's also the fact that we're putting partisan politics in. We're also chilling free speech because if a teacher is directing their students toward a particular political point of view, they're actually putting pressure on those who may have an alternative point of view from voicing their opinion for fear of social ostracization or potential repercussions from that teacher. Um, some other issues with this also is the fact that bringing students to the protest, it calls into question a lot of safety issues. And there's a lot of things that the MOU asks the CTU and asks schools to get in place that frankly are just not possible to get in place in a week's time in order to ensure the safety of the students of these protests. As somebody who's been to protests like this, I will tell you they're unsafe for even me, and I take my own safety precautions. I will actually be at this on May 1st, and I will be with a security guard because of the way that this happens on the ground. So it's surely not a place that's appropriate for 8-year-olds, 5-year-olds, 13-year-olds, 16-year-olds. Go on to the next slide. I'm going to pass it to Juan just to talk a little bit about what's been done so far.
Sure. No, thank you very much, Josh. Well, I think everything that Josh has outlined, I think the assumption, and this is my own assumption of what CPS or the CTU thought was going to happen, that once there was an agreement between both entities, that was that. In fact, I think the way the media portrayed it is that they had come to an agreement and everything was kind of put to rest. But actually, that agreement, that memorandum of understanding between CPS and CTU, raised a lot of questions on behalf of parents about what exactly this meant, what May 1st meant for them, for their children. I would say a lot of questions still linger to this day. And we knew that parents had to take action. It wasn't just like we're unhappy with it, but that they needed to take public action. And we're very proud of the fact that parents um, didn't shy away from this because once people enter the public sphere, and certainly I think everyone understands this these days that it's a difficult arena to step into, especially for parents that are not professional organizers, not professional activists. They just have concerns about their children. But by stepping out, they're putting themselves at risk of being criticized and being attacked through social media and all that. And they understood that, and they still came out and publicly opposed this MOU because it asked more questions, it begged more questions than answered. And as some of the parents said at the press conference that was had a week ago, it's their children, not the systems, and their children don't belong to the teachers union, or Chicago Public Schools. It is their children, and they took that to heart. And in our pursuit of looking for an attorney, the attorney that came to mind for them, and I will say that many of our parents are involved with the CPS in leadership roles in different sectors, especially in the bilingual ed arena. They remembered Bill Quinlan's name as the person who had defended Pedro Martinez. And so they had asked, is there any way that we can get Quinlan to support us? And we reached out, and Bill Quinlan was very open to the idea. We put that together fairly quickly. The MOU was put out on Friday, and by Monday we organized the press conference. Tremendous media that was present, and I think the parents were able to get their voice out there, and being taken seriously because they had the support of an attorney. And the purpose of the attorney is to really ask the questions of what does this mean exactly? I think in their haste of putting some kind of an agreement together, CPS and CTU opened themselves up to a potential lawsuit, only because the language of the MOU just left a big question of who agreed to this MOU. Is this something that CPS agreed to? Macklin King, because she didn't sign the agreement. It was a staffer, labor negotiator. But if you read the MOU, it kind of fluctuated from CPS to the board, and they kept mentioning the board, the board. And as you know, the Board of Education is a very separate entity from the Chicago Public Schools, and the board never approved anything. There was never a vote that was taken. And we certainly, knowing what goes on behind the scenes and people letting us know what was really going on, the board actually did not want to take a public vote out of concern for their politics. As you know, there is an elected school board election coming up in November, and some of the members that were appointed by Mayor Johnson were very concerned about stepping out and voting on this memorandum. And so they opted not to bring it to the board. But the memorandum is very clear that the board agreed to it. And so it just opened up questions there. And then the other question is just in terms of process. Usually, when a curriculum is approved or a calendar for professional development days, that's done at the beginning of the year and it is approved by the board. And so there is already a plan in place since last fall. But out of the blue, this change came about without any kind of formal approval, either from CPS or ISB for that matter. So it just raised a lot of questions. And because we were out there and there was a letter that was put together by our attorney, uh, that's what led to last week's change. Macklin King putting together kind of guidelines for principals that the any kind of plan would have to be approved, and certainly any kind of curriculum or any kind of changes by outside groups like the CTU would have to have approval, and that sparked a new debate between CTU and CPS. CTU saying they should not have to have an approval, that they should be trusted as professionals, as was said at the board meeting last week, Thursday. And I think we're still there, our parents are still there, and the threat of legal action is still there. And we're waiting to see what changes, if anything, might occur.
It's amazing that you brought so many people together, Juan. It's great.
Next slide. So what can parents, teachers, and students do now? Since there are a lot of questions about which schools are participating and in what way, we have put together a templated email for you to send your school principal. So we will follow up with access to a folder that includes that templated email. We encourage you to send it to your principal. And then send us the response, which we have an email address here that you can send that to. That way we can track what the schools are actually saying they are going to participate in and not, and hold them accountable to that. Then we know that there are going to be a lot of teachers that are going to be trying to bring curriculum that was not approved relative to the MOU into the classroom throughout the week. So we encourage you to stay active with your children and start asking them what is going on in classrooms from Tuesday through Friday. And this is an always thing, but obviously we're talking relative to Mayday, so specifically this week. Save all emails that you have to and from teachers about this or principals. I would encourage your kids to collect all handouts, record the website links and email blasts that you guys get or they get. Take photos. Look, not every kid is equipped to do this, but I think we have parents who know that their kids can do this, and I'm not sure what the cell phone policies are at each schools, but if it's possible, taking evidence or photos of classroom materials, recording notes of classroom activities, is going to be important. Specifically, things that are very partisan in nature. Um, we also, if a school we know is participating in sending people to rallies with a bus, we would like evidence that that's happening. Also, problematic teacher apparel and signs. And again, any partisan classwork discussions or statements by staff should be noted. And this email address is really meant for you to be able to report those things to us. So, what and look, like we're not here to stop civic education. We want civic education. We're not here to stop historic education about what happened with Mayday. Chicago's very important role with labor rights in America and the May 4th Haymarket riot and how that led to an 8-hour work week. Those are really important lessons for kids. That's really important history. And we're not talking about those things, but the litany of causes that are really politicized that we went through prior, some of the examples of curriculum that were brought to teachers, those are the types of things that we don't believe should be in classrooms. And we also don't believe that it's right to send these kids to a partisan political rally. So anything relative to that. And what are we going to do with that information? We are actively speaking with elected officials across the school board, the city, and the state. Basically, we want evidence of the MOU in action and oversteps, so that we can actually advocate on your behalf with Chicago Public Schools, the board, the state, and the Illinois State Board of Education. We also will have legal guidance available for appropriate incidents. We have an idea of when things cross the line into Title VI violations or other issues, other school board issues, so we can provide that to you. And just know too, your privacy is paramount. We will not reveal any PII without your permission. We store this stuff in a secure space. And to the extent that it's helpful, we may end up asking parents to participate in future conversations with elected officials on certain things that we're trying to accomplish with this information that we gather. So again, it's really important because there's no other way really to know what's going on in the classrooms except for your participation with your kids. And unfortunately, we're in a situation where teachers across the city, specifically teachers that are part of this union, have foreshadowed that they are trying to bring problematic stuff into your kid's classroom.
Yeah. And I would add, I always, as a parent, take these opportunities as an opportunity to talk about the actual civic, issue that Josh mentioned at home, so that when it comes up in class, they are equipped with, and of course, age appropriate. You're not going to talk about that with your 6-year-old, but your teenagers, about what Mayday is, what it is meant to, honor, and to be on the lookout for things that sort of veer from there, or tell them what to think or how to think. And I think what's scary, or I'm sorry, what to think instead of how to think. What scares me a little is that, the kids that don't know that they're being told, certain perspectives and aren't able to develop their own perspectives is certainly something that we all hopefully shared value of wanting our kids, not just our own kids, but other kids, to develop those skills in a world that demands it. So I will be right here with Josh and Juan to collect the information and hopefully in real time back and forth brainstorm if there are things that y'all need between now and Friday. And I know, Josh, you said you're going to be at the rally. So
Yeah, I'll be at the rally to record, where buses are coming from, where they're dropping kids off, try to figure out what schools they're coming from, see if we see any, problematic shirts or signs that really cause alarm. And that's all to build a foundation of leverage so that we can advocate for this really not to continue to happen or happen again, especially considering there's a lot of groups that are trying to do this in 2028 on May 1st, as not just to shut down your schools, but shut down your cities. And as part of the CTU memorandum, they actually secured May 1st, 2028 as a professional development day. So they've already penciled in, if you will, your children's participation in a very partisan rally that is meant to be very disruptive to our society and our economy that day.
And we often see that, they'll try out something in one particular place, like Chicago, and then it'll spread. If it goes the way they are hoping, they might spread to the suburbs, or it might be that other cities are watching. We've had people reach out to us from New York City and say, "I bet our union is also watching what's happening in Chicago." So it's really important that us as parents, community members, teachers are, holding them accountable. And I love that, Juan, you're a C4 because there's going to be a time when voting is going to matter a lot, and getting the word out about who the people are in the school leadership positions and making sure that we get people that are focused on the critical thinking and balanced education is going to be very important to all of us.
Yeah, the last thing I'll say about the groups that CTU has worked with in the past and who will also be in this rally, we're talking about one group that calls for the overthrow of the United States, the Freedom Road Socialist Organization, as well as another organization that's tied to multiple terrorist organizations or designated terrorist organizations. So these are just not groups that you really want your children to be associating with in a park in the middle of the city.
Daniel, will you flip to the next slide? So a couple of things, and we'll send some things in the email afterwards, but we have WhatsApp groups. If people want to be part of a WhatsApp group to talk about things in real time, we'll provide a way for you to join. There's a campaign that Navi is part of, and if Urban Center is interested, we'll bring you in as well. But there's a campaign going on nationwide called the Campaign for Responsible K-12 Education, and it's asking anyone and everybody to essentially hold their schools accountable to teachers remaining neutral in the classroom. It shouldn't, that in and of itself, that shouldn't be controversial, but apparently it is. And so it launched about 2 weeks ago, not even, and we've got over 1,000 signatures right now. We'd love to have more. This is a very motivating issue with what's going on with Mayday. So we'll send out that link, circulate it. And then the expectation is once we've gotten all the signatures, we will actually be asking allied teachers to put a poster up in their classroom that says that they will commit to remaining neutral in order to allow students to develop their own opinions. So more on that to come, but we'll send the link, and we appreciate you sharing that around. I think it's really important, and it could be effective with leaders to say, we've got 1,000 parents in Chicago that have supported this. So that should be, part of how we're thinking about it. I mentioned the WhatsApp group. We will send the template letter as well to use with your principals. Am I missing anything else, Josh?
I don't think so. Again, the recording will come too, so please share it around to other parents that
Yeah.
should see this.
Yep. And then we have one question and one comment. The comment is, I have a comment. If this angers or frustrates you, shop, shop, shop. Yeah, yes, will do. And the other is, what role, if any, are local Jewish organizations like GOF playing in this? Are they involved? And if so, can you speak to that at all? I don't have any insight into that.
Yeah, I don't have any insight into that. Any
Anything
other
else?
any other questions? We can hang on for a couple more minutes. If we don't see any, though, we'll close up. What about permission slips for these kids? So, part of the student travel policy is that parents are supposed to sign permission slips for kids to go on a field trip to the rally. So that is part of the reason we want to make sure that that is adhered to. So knowing that, your school is participating in this, we would also want to hold them account to the fact that they have to follow the full student travel policy.
Yeah.
Could you also make posters for paraprofessionals?
That's so the core campaign. Yeah, probably. I'll take that back to the core folks.
Okay.
Um,
Is there a way to find out what you know about activity at a certain school?
like us, Nabi, and Urban Center, I think is how I'm interpreting that. That was what I was going to mention. I'd encourage everybody, if they're not already following the Nabi K-12 extremism Substack, it's a great place to see where we've collated intel. And I guess with respect to that question, I would say as stuff comes in, as you all are collecting things, we'll probably ask you whether you're comfortable with us publishing it without identifying information, and we'll try to get information out somehow. Um,
Are you aware now of any plans for similar situations in other states? So these May Day demonstrations are going on across the country, but as far as schools go, I've heard of two situations. One, there are many North Carolina schools who have closed so that teachers and students can participate in May Day rallies. And I believe Madison, Wisconsin was the other one that I saw. Sharon, I don't know if you knew of any more.
well, it was interesting. The first CTU resolution mentioned Minneapolis. So I haven't done a whole lot of digging, but I suspect they've got allies in Minneapolis, which wouldn't surprise me.
Do you want the
Do you,
principal's emails if it's neutral or positive not participating? Yeah, I
yeah,
think we want all responses because if they send a positive response and then we see something happen at their school, that's part of holding them accountable to what they're saying they're doing.
yeah, and I would also say if you have no response, like if they completely stonewall you, also relevant. So give it a few days, and then if you hear nothing by Friday, you can send us a note and say, "Here's the email I sent, and I got zero response." Um, Will the subtext site info be in the info distributed? Yes, we'll send it in the post webinar links. Um, Thank you from a teacher. Leadership has friends in Minneapolis. Not surprised.
I have friends in Minneapolis too.
Did you go
Right.
to school there?
I did. I went to the University of
Yeah.
Minnesota. Yeah. Thank you very much from a concerned grandparent from Colorado. Thanks for joining us. Skokie incidents in the park with Jewish kids. Are you involved? Ways to stop violence stemming from anti-Israel stuff being promoted in schools. We are not directly involved in that. I know a little bit about it. I do know that Annie Warshaw, who is an integral part of the Jewish United Fund, is on the school board at District 68, and also Allison Slovin is a trustee. So I trust those two individuals. I believe they're on top of it. But we're keeping our eye on really anything that's specific to District 68.
Yeah.
Um,
And then
the
I guess I would add to that question is, we were founded, many people that came to Navi initially were interested in fighting anti-Semitism. We believe there are root causes that underlie the proliferation of anti-Semitism. So we don't deal, there are other organizations that are sort of specifically dealing with that, but we believe that by instilling American civic values, addressing, controversial issues, getting transparency, that we will sort of um, get to the root causes. So we work very closely with many of those other organizations. I happen to also be on the board of Stand With Us Midwest, very important to many of us, but Navi isn't specifically sort of doing that work. Somebody's mentioning the University of Chicago. In fact, the University of Chicago is the origin of institutional neutrality. I think it was in the late 60s or early 70s that they actually came out with something called the Calvin Report. And they haven't always stuck to it, but they've been sort of the, example to follow. And we actually do have a packet that if anyone's interested on how to propose to your district institutional neutrality and ensuring controversial issues are appropriately addressed. I think there's no chance that we would get that passed in CPS at this very moment. Maybe one day with a different makeup of board leadership. But in other districts, we've certainly seen some movement toward that, and we're happy to, provide guidance on pushing policy.
So good,
The
good to know
the
that.
Yeah,
Go
go
ahead.
ahead.
Yeah, we have had conversations with CPS board members about this, and there is one that came back to me after this whole thing went about, and it asked, "Hey, can we revisit this? I may want to bring it up to the board now that this has happened." So, sometime like what we all discover from what happens over this week could help actually build some support for a neutrality policy at CPS. Although I agree with Sharon, it's unlikely until we have elections that we have a better makeup on the school board.
Yeah, but get loud. I mean, I think that's part of it too, the parent pressure. This is a very tiny question, but yes, this campaign is nationwide, this responsible education. So spread it far and wide.
Yeah.
Um, they now
Jo-
have all civic guidance.
Josh, if I can just make one plug once again for the elections for school board. Elections are November 3rd. They're coming up. The work that we're doing right now is to identify and recruit candidates for each of the 20 districts to ensure that parents and families and taxpayers have an option outside of the CTU candidates that will be running in those elections. But it's very important that everybody be involved in those races and come out and vote. And we'll do our part to expose those that are being supported by the CTU.
Thanks, Juan.
So
Really
appreciate what you're
important.
doing, Juan, and excited that we're working together.
Yeah, same here.
All right. Thank you, everybody. We appreciate it. We hope to hear from you with participation in this week, and have a good evening.